This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello and welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we talk the latest and greatest news in the world of sports. As always, I'm Alex. Ben and Anthony will be joining us again tomorrow. Today we have some Monday Night Football to recap between the Cardinals and the New York Jets. We have some ALCS between the Indians and the Blue Jays to talk about. And I'm going to update you guys on just some news through sports in general, some injuries, some signings, things along that line. We're going to start with Monday Night Football. The Arizona Cardinals hosted the New York Jets in an NFC-AFC cross matchup. The Arizona Cardinals came out on top in this one, 28-3, scoring a touchdown in every quarter last night. The Jets only being able to put points on the board in the second with a field goal. Carson Palmer led the day in terms of passing for both teams, 23 for 34, 213 and 1. He didn't take any sacks. Very efficient on his end. John Brown, leading receiver for the Cardinals, 5 for 54, followed by Fitzgerald, 6 for 49. The big story for their offense, though, being their running back, David Johnson, 22 carries, 111 yards with 3 touchdowns, one being a long of 58. Very impressive day from him, to say the least. He looked very good. He looked very poised. He looked very ready to lead that offense, which is a big thing, especially if Carson Palmer was to get hurt again. Now, he did. I believe he came out at one point or another. I know he had sore hamstring problems. He did come out. Drew Stanton did attempt a pass and completed the pass for 12 yards. So, apparently that should be fine. As far as Palmer says, it's no big deal. Now moving over to the Jets, Ryan Fitzpatrick, 16 for 31, 174. He had an interception in this game. He was not playing very well at all. He also fumbled the ball. I believe they got that one back, though. But Geno Smith eventually came in the game near the end, I believe. 4 for 6, 31 yards, threw an interception to Tyrann Mathieu. Did not look much better. He had a fumble also. Their rushing numbers were not good at all. As a team, they had 33 yards, led by Matt Forte's 9 carries for 19 yards. Their receivers were led by Brandon Marshall, 3 for 70. He had that number, I want to say, going into the fourth. Didn't get any better. Carson Palmer fumbled the ball twice, did not lose any, though. Neither did Fitzgerald. Team, though, the Jets did throw, like I said, the 2 interceptions. Tyrann Mathieu got one of them. And DJ Swearinger, the safety, got another, formerly of the Houston Texans. This Jets team has, they are not looking good. Let's put it that way. They're not looking good. I don't know what it is with this team. I feel like it's almost the exact same team that almost, made the playoffs last year. I don't know how much turnover they really had. They, looked to have turnover in one of the biggest positions until Fitzpatrick came back, and he came back, and everybody's like, okay, this is a team that we can get behind them. And, they're 1-5 now. They're 1-3 on the road. They are a team that's obviously probably not going to make the playoffs. Their only win coming against the Bills. In the next few weeks, they have the Ravens, the Browns, the Dolphins, and the Rams. Those are games they could possibly win or very much be in. But at the same time, I look at it as the Ravens have a chance to the Ravens have a chance to jump on the possibility of the Steelers losing another one with Roethlisberger out, which I'll get to later in the show. The next week, the Browns have a chance to, if they don't this upcoming week, maybe win their first game of the year. The Dolphins looked good this weekend against a Steelers team with no answers, but we don't know how good that possibly is. And then you have the Rams, who I could very much say had one of the most exciting games of the weekend against the Lions, and they could easily take that one. And then not to mention the Patriots following that on November 27th. So the Jets have some work to do. Their defense is not stopping anybody. They're currently 25th in the league for points against, 27.3. They're not doing great as a team in general. Their offense, 21st in the league. Points for is last in the league at 15.8. I'm sure last night was a big blow to that average. But they're just not getting it done. They're not getting to the passer. They're not stopping the run. We saw that especially last night. Their defense is not good. I don't know how bad you could say it is after a year that it was actually very good. I thought this defense last year was a very good defense. I thought they got to the runner very well. I thought they got to the passer well. I thought they did a lot of things well last year as a defense that they're definitely not doing this year. I think their offense was not bad last year. I mean, now, as we stand, their defense is ranked, passing defense is ranked 29th, which is not good. That's, very close to last. That's 3 from last. And then, like I said, their offense is just not producing. Their offense is one of the worst in the league when it comes to scoring points. When it comes to actually getting points on the board, they're not getting it done. Their defense, like I said, 24th in the league. Obviously not very good. In any stretch of the imagination. And then you look at their passing offense, 29th in the league. Not good. You look at their rushing offense, a little bit better. They're up at 6th. They did have a few good games from Forte and some more rushers on the team, but that's not a consistent thing so far for them by any stretch of the imagination. They have some work to do. They really do. They're sitting at 1-5 now, 1-3 on the road. They can't win on the road. They're currently in absolute last place in their division at 1-5. Miami is at 2-4. Buffalo holding pace with New England at 4-2, and of course, New England is sitting at 5-1. The Cardinals moved to 3-3, puts them in a tie relatively with the Rams at 3-3, but with tiebreakers in that nature, the Rams are in second place. 4-1 is the first place Seattle. That's where they're sitting currently. And San Francisco is sitting at 1-5 in the basement of the NFC West after another loss this weekend. The Cardinals go on to play the Seahawks this week, which should be an interesting game, seeing the slow start that the Cardinals put forth. A stronger start from the Seahawks, as we said, 4-1 for them, coming off a late win against the Falcons at home this past weekend. This is a Sunday night game, I do believe. This one's going to be a tricky one because the Seahawks looked really good at times against the Falcons, and they have looked really good at times in these first 5 weeks. 6 weeks, at their bye. So 1 game short. They could win this game. I mean, we've seen them go there. They're playing at home, so they're not playing CenturyLink yet. That's later in the year. We've seen them win this game before. They have this game. They have a rematch of this past season's NFC Championship game against the Panthers. I think both of these teams are nowhere near the team they were last year, but I do think that the Cardinals are still a little better off than the Panthers are this year. The Panthers are playing horribly. The Cardinals have their first game against the 49ers. And then they play the Vikings, which is going to be a tough one. And I'm sorry, actually, they have their second game against the 49ers. The first one they won. It's going to be interesting to see the stretch for these next few weeks for them. They could go 2-2. I mean, like I said, Seahawks, Panthers, Niners, then the Vikings. I think they can beat the Panthers. I think they can beat the Niners. The Vikings is going to be tough because the Vikings have been tough for everybody this year. And then, of course, the Seahawks are going to be a tough game as well. So we'll have to see where they go from there. Like I said, currently 3-3. They're fighting for their playoff lives. It's going to be very hard for them to make the playoffs, especially in this division, currently as it stands. So we'll see where they go from here. I mean, 3-3, like I said. To me, an interesting way about it. The Cardinals, of course, 4th in the league in rushing. Still also lower grade, in terms of in the league passing-wise, 18th. Their defense, though, is still pretty good. 6th in the league for points against. And they are currently scoring the 10th highest in the league for points for. So, this team has elements that are still making them dangerous. Whether or not they can continue this and put a little stretch of wins on here remains to be seen. All right, we're going to take our first break here. We're going to come back. We're going to talk ALCS baseball, Indians and Blue Jays, Game 3 here in just a minute. So, we'll be right back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we're back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Let's look at baseball now, and we move to the Game 3 of the ALCS between the Cleveland Indians and the Blue Jays, who led this series 2-0 last night going into this game. Well, the Indians win another one, 4-2 in favor of the Tribe. They can move to 3-0 in terms of the record in this one. They are a game away from the Fall Classic, away from the World Series this year. You had 4 runs on 7 hits for the Tribe, 2 runs on 7 hits for the Blue Jays. The biggest coming from Mike Napoli and Kipnis in the 6th against Stroman, both hitting home runs there. Napoli, of course, a 2-out home run, I believe, there as well. Very impressive day from them because a lot went against them. Trevor Bauer had to exit in the first with a bloody finger from his drone injury. People will remember that Trevor Bauer was scratched from his Game 2 start. He flip-flopped with the Game 2 starter to go to Game 3 because he did have that cut on the top of his finger. Well, 4 batters into the first inning of Game 3, you could see very clearly that his finger was bleeding very profusely all over the place. And they had to get him out of the game. He was forced out. He wanted to keep going. Everybody knows he wanted to keep going. But he couldn't continue, wasn't allowed to continue. He was quoted as saying, "I'm a competitor, man. I want to be out there. I wouldn't have gone out there if I didn't want to be out there. It was my turn to pitch, and I expected myself to go deep into that ball game like I always do." For those who didn't know, he gashed his finger while doing routine maintenance on a drone last week. He's a big drone guy. He's got a little tiny drone. He likes it a lot. According to Bauer, his finger hadn't bled in the previous 2 days, leading the Indians to believe he would be able to pitch just fine. But I saw some pictures. It was pretty bleed. It was pretty bleed. What's a good word for that? It was pretty bloody. Bauer said he felt the blood trickling down his ring finger after the third pitch, and then eventually you could see it. He said he looked down. It looked pretty good. He was bleeding pretty good. And, of course, like I said, you've seen pictures. It was bleeding pretty good. The Indians, though, used the use of 6 relievers. They combined to record 25 outs altogether as a team. It was pretty impressive. Nobody pitched more than 1.2 innings. Nobody threw more than 28 pitches. It was very impressive as a bullpen to see for a team to do that. When, you're expecting, you may be prepared, you may not be prepared. I don't know if Francona naturally prepared in case Bauer would have to come out sooner. But they looked 100% prepared to take on this. I mean, they gave up their 2 runs. Otero and McAllister both gave up runs in their innings plus pitched. But this bullpen, I mean, by the time they came in, this was a 1-run game. The Indians put up 1 in the first. Toronto came back, put up 1 of their own in the second. Cleveland came back again, put up 1 in the fourth. Toronto 1 in the fifth, and that was the end of their scoring because they ended up only scoring 2. But Cleveland put up 2 more in the sixth and rode that all the way to the ninth with an ninth inning save there for Mr. Miller, Mr. Andrew Miller, who's one of the best closers in the game this year. I mean, you can't ask for anything more from your bullpen, whether it's Dan Otero, who came in first, Jeff Manship, you have Zach McAllister, who came in, of course, did a great job. Brian Shaw came in, and then Cody Allen bridged that gap to, Andrew Miller there to close the game out. You look over at the Blue Jays, their starting pitcher, Marcus Stroman, he went 5 innings roughly, gave it 3 hits, 4 runs, 4 earned runs. He's responsible for all the runs from yesterday's game. He gave up the 2 home runs, of course, that really, really held on them for most of that game. Napoli had a double that scored 1 in the first, and then the Saunders home run, as I mentioned. Napoli again had a home run to center field, and that one was a solo shot. Going to ground it out to the pitcher, and Carrera scored there in the 5th for the Blue Jays, and then Kipnis homered, a monster shot, 421, just short of Napoli's to center, 428. And then later in the game, you have an RBI single from Ramirez to score Napoli to put them up 4-2. I mean, it was a very good game. It was a competitive game. You have Game 4 coming up shortly, very shortly here. I forget if it's tonight or not. I will look right now. But they very well could have a ticket punched as early as today. Yeah, they have their game tomorrow. Today, here we go, yeah. Corey Kluber facing Aaron Sanchez. That game's going to be starting at 1 p.m. That's Pacific Standard Time. So you're looking at 4 p.m. over on the East Coast. I'm not sure what time that is in Toronto. But you could very much be looking at, and like I said, they're up 3-0. You could be looking at your AL World Series team here at the end of the day. You very well could be. And if that's the case, man, are they going to have some rest time for whoever ends up winning the NL Series? Which, I mean, that can't start, or at least the NL Series can't start until I think at least would be Saturday. I'm not sure exactly. No, it wouldn't be till next week. If it went to Game 7, you'd be looking at next week for the World Series to start. So if they end it today, you could be looking at almost a full week's rest before you have to face the NL champion. That's not too shabby. You can get your pinkies all rested up if that's a problem for somebody. Apparently it was. You can get your other pitchers all rested, your bullpen rested, who just went through quite a game last night. You'd be in good shape. And then, of course, we have the Dodgers series tonight. Game 3 of the NLCS between Chicago and L.A. First game in L.A. It's currently tied at 1-1. We have Jake Arrieta going for the Cubs, the reigning Cy Young winner, versus Rich Hill of the Dodgers, who was pretty dominant this past season here, especially in L.A. Kershaw, of course, pitched the lights-out game there for them in Game 1. It's a tough matchup for Lester, I believe, who was the starting pitcher for the Tribe. For the Cubs. Tomorrow, we have Game 4, and we'll see where we stand at that point. Who is up 2-1. John Lackey is throwing for the Cubs, and with Julio Urias for the Dodgers becomes the youngest pitcher to start a Champions Series game at 20 years old. It's going to be an interesting one, and I'm pretty excited. Playoff baseball is great baseball, you know. I may be a Giants fan, and yes, they did lose, but my favorite type of baseball is playoff baseball. There's just something different about it. It's always very enjoyable to me. All right, listen, we're going to take our last break here. We're going to come back. I'm going to give you some updates on the NFL, some baseball, some basketball, any news that has come out in the past couple of days that we haven't been able to talk about in the last sports show that I want to sprinkle into this sports show. So we will do that real quick here, and we'll be right back at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
And we're back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. We're just going to discuss a little news in the world of sports. Let's start in basketball. It's one that happened over the weekend, or yesterday. I forget exactly the date in which it happened, or at least became official. But the Bulls made a deal to acquire Michael Carter-Williams, the former Rookie of the Year, for the Milwaukee Bucks, Tony Snell. Interesting, in my opinion, that they would go and make that trade. Like I said, Michael Carter-Williams was the former Rookie of the Year. Tony Snell's a swing man. Both were selected in the first round of the 2013 draft. Of course, like I said, Carter-Williams at 11. Snell going at number 20. Carter-Williams was the 2013-14 NBA Rookie of the Year. Pretty good year, if you ask me. Tony Snell hasn't quite been as advertised. Not bad for the Bulls, but not quite what you want out of a player. Much more so like Michael Carter-Williams was. So I guess the deal, in a sense, makes sense. You know, you didn't quite get what you need out of your first-round pick that year. Well, you went and got one that got a lot out of what he was expected. So, I mean, I think it's an impressive move by the Bulls. I'm not sure that I would have given up Carter-Williams for Snell, personally. I find that move interesting for the Bucks. But you live with it and you die with it, I suppose. Moving to football, there's not much more news without their sports. You know, most of baseball is sitting just playoff baseball. Not much news there. Hockey's really just getting going. Not as much news there. So let's just cover the last bit of football. Ryan Fitzpatrick is still the starter of the Jets after being pulled at the end of last night's game, says Todd Bowles. He's going into next week's game as the starter. That is against Baltimore, as I was saying earlier, who have dropped 3 straight. The Jets have scored only 3 touchdowns in the past 4 games, and one of them was a fluke fumble return, quote, end quote. Colin Kaepernick, to keep it in the quarterback news. Colin Kaepernick is scheduled for his second straight start on Sunday against the Buccaneers. Coach Chip Kelly liked what he did and thinks they can build on what Kaepernick did in his first start against the Buffalo Bills. So he thought he played, quote, okay, but there were things Kaepernick can continue to develop. Asked whether Kaepernick, who started the first week, is this week's starter. He said, yeah, we'll see. Not exactly an amazing kind of, support system there. Oh, yeah, we'll see. But I expected him to fully start the next game as well. He didn't play horribly. I think he played just as well as a Blaine Gabbert team has played this year. So we'll have to see, if they progress from there as well. Moving to Miami, Rashad Jones, who's had some problems this season with injuries, could be out for the rest of the year. He suffered a torn rotator cuff in the win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Could miss the rest of the year. It would be a big blow to the team. He's a perennial Pro Bowler. Major blow to the team who has the 28th rated defense. Jones is currently second on the team. with 51 tackles and, of course, picked up his first interception this past weekend against Ben Roethlisberger. He also led the team in tackles last year and interception, with 5 last year on the way to his first Pro Bowl. Ben Roethlisberger, of course, who hurt his knee in that game, had surgery on Monday for a torn meniscus. He will miss for sure this weekend's matchup against the Patriots. Then they have a bye week, and then all bets are off as to when he comes back. Roethlisberger has always been somebody who's come back sooner rather than later from injuries. And it's a division game against the Ravens. That's one I'm sure he's going to want to be there for. But as of right now, there's not really a timetable specific for when he is supposed to come back. Mike Tomlin said they are confident it's not a long-term injury. And he does believe that he could be back sooner rather than later. Terrell Suggs, I believe we mentioned in yesterday's sports show, tore his bicep, possibly done for the year. He's played through it before. The injury is not considered season-ending, but the possibility of him getting hurt worse is still there. Michael Bennett sustained a right knee injury against the Falcons when he was cut blocked by Jake Matthews, Clay Matthews' cousin. He expected to play next week, so there was nothing too major. And then one of the last bits was something that came in this morning. And that is the Green Bay Packers have traded for Kansas City Chiefs running back backup return guy Niall Davis. They traded a conditional late-round draft pick to the Chiefs in exchange for Niall Davis. The Packers, of course, are shorthanded in the backfield. Eddie Lacy has been hurt up and down with an injury to his ankle. And James Starks recently underwent knee surgery. For those who remember, Niall Davis has spent all 4 of his years in the league in Kansas City. He's played at 50 games. He's rushed for 775 yards and 11 touchdowns. This season he's only played 4 games, but has played 4 games, but only has 1 rushing attempt, and of course no touchdowns. The Chiefs, of course, have pretty good depth there at the running back position. They have Jamal Charles, Spencer Ware, who had a great weekend, and Sharkhandrick West, who has shown he can play well also. So if you look at it that way, it was an embarrassment of riches in a sense for them, and they are on their way to another draft pick there. It's nice for them because some teams are very good at using draft picks, especially late in the round. But that's all the news I have for you guys today. One thing I will actually say real quick, injury to hockey player Vander Kane. He has 3 cracked ribs. He is out for a few weeks at least. Yeah, after crashing into the boards during Thursday night's game, Buffalo Sabres first-line winger Vander Kane again suffered 3 cracked ribs after crashing into the end boards during their game on Thursday. So, that's all the news I have for you guys today. As always, I'd like to thank you for listening. Ben will be back tomorrow. Anthony will be here tomorrow. We're going to talk everything and anything you can think of, probably absolutely both of the baseball games tonight, NLCS Game 3 and Game 4 of the ALCS. We'll be talking both of those and anything else you can think of. If it's relevant, if it's hitting, if it's breaking, we will talk it. For Anthony, for Ben, I'd like to thank you guys for listening. As always, I'm Alex, and we will see you tomorrow. You guys have a good rest of your day and enjoy your sports.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.